heater! I dare you to hit it!
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What's good? Baseball Unstitched. We are back. Flax, riding a little bit of a high today after that USA Dominican Republic game. That was a ton of fun last night. Getting to live stream it and hang out with you guys on the socials always makes it better.
I couldn't believe that the game stayed as tight as it did. I really thought the bullpens were going to blow it. Bullpen showed up.
On both sides, too. Something to get into at some point in time. But at the end of the day, the USA will prevail, moving on to the semifinals. Really good semifinal game tonight that we will not end up, what'd I say?
You said moving on to the semifinals.
Oh, I meant to say
Team USA is moving on to the finals, baby.
I meant to say moving through the semifinals, but welcome to Monday. Still in that space. Italy versus Venezuela tonight. For those of you who will watch, I'm sure by the time you listen to this, you will know the outcome. Because, frankly, it's the only way you're listening to it. Either way, we got a good show for you guys today. This week in baseball, as always, we'll recap a little bit about what's going on in the World Baseball Classic. A couple spring training standouts for you guys. Flax, something that we don't always hit on. We're going to talk a little bit about the NPB, Samurai Japan, the Japanese national team, and some of the discussion that's being had about the reformation or changes that might be coming to Japanese baseball. Topic number 2 today, the Kansas City Royals. I don't know. There's some guys in the WBC who play on that roster who are absolutely raking right now. Maikel Garcia, he'll go tonight as well. We're going to talk a little bit about what the Royals have going on here in 2026 and our expectations of that roster. Finally, we will talk about a homage to Clayton Kershaw, who reportedly, after being pulled off of the U.S. roster, is probably and officially done playing professional baseball. And what a career he had. We'll sprinkle in some Jackson's bullpen in there as well, because we know you guys want to learn something just as much as us. Flax, on the flip side, though, how was your weekend?
Weekend was good. You and I went to a PWHL hockey game, which was a lot of fun. Other than that, we got a little bit of snow here in Denver, which I'm sure will be gone by tomorrow. It's supposed to be 70 degrees. Otherwise, pretty good. Just, slightly enraged at AI, as I always am. But other than that, feeling pretty good.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, good weekend across the board. Ready for baseball season. We got a scrimmage this weekend, which is going to be a lot of fun. So that's kind of where my head's at this point. I can't stop thinking about baseball, whether it be games I'm getting to be in or games I'm watching at this point, but it's probably why we have a baseball podcast. Flex, this week in baseball in the World Baseball Classic, Venezuela stuns Japan, takes them out in the semifinals. The Venezuelan team won 8-5 with a huge 3-run home run by Willier Abreu and good work by the bullpen. You did a great breakdown on the changes Willier Abreu made this offseason to help him adjust and hit the high fastball better. We saw him do that in the biggest spot, in the biggest moment for Venezuela.
Yeah, and it was cool because Jeff Passan had mentioned that was something that he very specifically worked on this offseason, was to hit the high fastball better. He notably did not hit it very well at all last year. It was a hole in his swing and something that teams were able to take advantage of, especially hard-throwing righties up in the zone. So good to see him start to get a better understanding of how to attack that. If you want to go see that, it's on Twitter. Just search his name under our account. You'll find it pretty quickly. In that game, though, I think one of the coolest parts were the dueling leadoff home runs. Ronald Acuna Jr. stuck to the plan that we talked about last night, which was go hit a hard fastball early when you get it and you have the opportunity to. And then Shohei was just Shohei, taking Ranger Suarez deep with ease to lead off the game. I think he had 420 feet or something like that. He's so good.
Effortless is maybe the easiest way to state it. The only thing more effortless than Shohei Ohtani's swing on that home run was Aaron Judge's throw from right field to third base for the second time in the WBC tournament. The United States team, as we mentioned, gets past the potent Dominican Republic lineup and team 2-1 in a tight semifinal game. Gunnar Henderson, Roman Anthony headlining the home runs that would allow Team USA to win. Aaron Judge with another spectacular throw to gun a runner down at third base. Flax, I think the funnier part here is you and I all night continued to sit there and say solo home runs aren't going to win this game. Solo home runs aren't going to win this game. And solo home runs won the game.
Yeah. I mean, listen, when it's a pitcher's duel, that's really the only time that happens. But I wasn't expecting this to be that. I wasn't expecting the bullpens to show up like they did. Last piece for this week in baseball for the game that is happening tonight, how Italy got there. They beat Puerto Rico. Again, we talked about this before. This was not Puerto Rico's best roster. I think this is one of the best rosters we've seen out of Italy. I think if you were expecting Puerto Rico to win this game, you weren't paying attention to the pool play rounds. You know, Javi Baez wasn't playing. Francisco Lindor wasn't playing. I know I'm missing like 6 other guys that were not on that roster that should have been on that roster for various reasons.
Yeah, one of the most interesting ones I actually saw today, Riley Green was asked to play on the Puerto Rican team, made the decision not to this time around. So look out for him as a guy who might end up wearing a Puerto Rico jersey in 2029. Never know.
I thought you were going to say the red, white, and blue.
Well, I thought about it. Then I thought to myself, and that's where that conversation ended in my head.
Would have been a nice trail off because he could realistically wear the red, white, and blue in a lot of different ways.
You know what? I could have said it and just been right if I wanted to be. But
that's right.
Either way,
Italy banged the ball around in that game and absolutely showed up. So I expect them to do the same against Venezuela. They're not going to slow down.
I think the game tonight will be just as fun as the game last night. So as you're listening to this, we hope it's as entertaining as we think it will be. Flax, couple spring training standouts here. Giancarlo Stanton is starting to heat up. He hammered 2 mammoth home runs, combining for 182 feet worth of distance. The swing is coming back for one of the hardest swingers in all of baseball.
Yeah, this is better than elbows issues that he had last year. They never even specified what the problem was. He just didn't play in spring training because of elbows, plural. So good to see him in spring training, swinging the bat. I think, the only thing I dislike about him in general from a roster perspective is that there is zero versatility. So when you want to get a guy like Jason Dominguez more at bats and you want to take the pressure of the defensive side off of his plate, or when you need to get Aaron Judge some days off his feet, you just take Stanton out of the lineup. But otherwise, it's good to see him playing well. J.R. Ritchie on the NL side for the Atlanta Braves pitched 4 no-hit innings, 6 strikeouts. He's looked about as good as we expected him to. We named him as our breakout player for the Braves this year. Expecting him finally, I think this will be his second year coming off of an arm injury. He was a high school guy, throws really hard, has really sharp stuff. But more than anything, he's going to be really nice added depth for this Braves roster that really needs it in their starting rotation. I think he's going to make more starts than people realize. I think he'll end up in a swingman role very early. But this is a guy that is going to give them a lot of opportunity to compete in the NL East like they did not last year.
Yeah, sits mid-90s, can run it up to 97, 98. Just a really good overall arm for the Braves. They've done a great job developing him, I think is the biggest thing here for me. He's got a nice slider that does produce whiffs. So I think Ritchie is one to watch, especially with the Atlanta Braves needing as much depth as they can possibly get in the starting rotation. Moving right along here, Jackson Wolf for the San Diego Padres after a little bit of a tough start to spring training has looked very good in his last 7.2 innings. They've all been scoreless over his last 5 outings. This is an arm who could make an impact for San Diego as we move towards the start of the 2026 season. Yeah,
I think that the Padres are going to be looking for any arms they can, especially with Joe Musgrove going down, announced today. So, I again, just spring training standouts are exactly that, right? And that's the most important thing to keep in mind. They're guys who are playing well in this setting. But again, as our good friend Jack Wilson put it, he hit 350 at spring training. Spring training is exactly what it is. When we get to the regular season, everything changes, everything gets ramped up. And as a pitcher, you're generally only facing some of the hardest hitters to face. Spring training, not always the case.
Another time a day?
Yeah,
not 3.
Right. That too. Another big name, Yordan Alvarez, missed a lot of last year because of injury. Starting to find his swing again. Started to hit balls hard the last 2 of the last 3 games. I think he has 5 total hits, including his 1 home run. But the biggest thing, the plate discipline's still there. He's seeing the ball well. He's making good swing decisions. The quality of contact might not be there yet. But again, we're talking about a guy who in 22 at-bats, bad quality of contact is hitting somewhere between 260, 270, which just means that when he starts to take it up a notch, we're looking still at a 300 hitter who's going to probably blast 40 home runs as long as he stays healthy for 145 games. And he's going to be a big piece of the Astros lineup.
Yeah, no real question here. It's Yordan Alvarez, right? I think the expectation is simple. If he's on the field, the Astros are going to get the power bat that we all know him to be. It is really, really good to see the fact that he's got 4 walks to 6 strikeouts at the current moment and over those 22 at-bats. I think it shows exactly what you said, which is his pitch selection has not changed, and he has the ability to go up there and take a really solid big league at bat 100% of the time. Flax, our last call out here, and this is just a fun one. 2025 first-round pick out of high school, Jordan Yost for the Detroit Tigers. First spring training AB, Yabo. Not only a Yabo, grand slam to help Detroit win 12-1. Again, not that we're worried about the score in a spring training game. Hit it 380 feet, 102 off the bat as a kid just out of high school. Hey, man, what else you asking for? That's a pretty good start for Mr. Yost.
Yeah, I mean, again, spring training is spring training. But take the good when you get the good, right? We said the same thing about Vance Honeycutt. The dude's going to hit 4 home runs in 4 at-bats. We're not going to be mad about it. We're going to take the positive, but we're also going to be just as critical of the negative or the realities of the positive. So
that's this week in baseball. A lot of fun as always. More to come as the season turns on. We're closing into opening day here, Flax. Like this end of this week, correct? Am I crazy?
End of next week.
Next week. See, I'm already in
March 25th.
Future.
March 25th. There is a game on Netflix between the Yankees and the Giants, and that is opening night. And then the next day, on Thursday the 26th, is a semi-full slate of games.
9 days away, my baseball number, 9. So you know
and
what the MLB could do is they could put one of those pictures of me up, and it says, we're Ryan days away from the MLB season.
I can't believe we actually haven't done that yet.
We could.
Such a swing and a miss by us.
Still 9 days left. We'll find out. It'll be 8 by the time you listen to this. So if you saw the tweet, you were in the know. Either way, Flax, let's jump into topic number 1 here. Hirokazu Ibata, the manager of the Japanese national team, stepped down after the loss against Venezuela. This is the first time in WBC history that Japan has not made it to, at bare minimum, the semifinals. Something I actually, if you remember, immediately mentioned to you, was one of the first takeaways I had, was the fact that this Japanese team, from a standpoint of international play, has been quite dominant. We've had 5 WBCs. They've won 3 of them. They've consistently been there in the end. So this is, whether people realize it or not, an early exit for a team that was expected to do more. General thoughts, Flax, before we jump into Ibata and the Japanese team themselves.
I mean, they were missing a lot of guys.
Sure. When
it comes to who would have been available to pitch for them. I think the biggest one right out of the gate, if you want to, look for who they would have brought out of the bullpen, would have been Yuki Matsui. He was unavailable, got hurt during spring training with the Padres. Tatsuya Imai, who probably would have started a game, opted to prepare for his 2026 season, newly joining the Astros. Roki Sasaki, similarly, wanted to be with the Dodgers. Kodai Senga with the Mets, coming off of his injury, trying to get back to 100% health. Ohtani was not available out of the bullpen. And then again, even past that, and Ibata had mentioned this, he had started reaching out to some guys that they've lost to the U.S. pipeline, guys that have gone to college, Rintaro Sasaki, and a couple other bats that would have been important to at least have in the room, on the bench, on the roster, getting opportunities in some of those early stage games and potentially help the offense that are maybe two-way capable. The biggest issue Japan and the Japanese team has faced really over the last couple of years is having to fight between guys who bring offense and guys who bring defense. And we saw it in that game against Venezuela. They put guys in the lineup that were going to provide offense, not defense. And then we saw them play about as poorly defended of a game as we've seen them play in the WBC across the board.
Maybe an international play, right? One of the biggest calling cards of Japanese baseball is the fact that they are consistently more defensive sound than everybody else around. Ibata kind of ironically embodies that, and this goes into our entire conversation. This is a guy who is an elite defender and player in the NPB, well known across the board, known for his defense, known for his ability to put the ball in play, known for his baseball IQ. One of the things that we've consistently seen for Samurai Japan is the leader or manager of that ball club has consistently been a former superstar player in their league. And it's something that has kind of come up as a discussion of how Japan moves forward and how the national team moves forward with selecting who is going to be the leader of that national team roster. Ibata played a key role in the 2013 WBC, helping them solidify their road to the championship that year. He played on the, he was on the coaching staff on their 2020 Summer Olympics team. He was named the manager in 2023 of Samurai Japan, and obviously stepping down now after this loss. But Flax, the more interesting thing here is kind of what came out of all of this, which is a lot of officials and a lot of talk around the changes that might need to happen or could be coming, or reformation of Japanese baseball. I'm going to read you a couple different snippets here about some of the things that have kind of been brought up and said. Get your thoughts, get my thoughts on them. And then we also wanted to bring in a guy who we know really well and read some of his stuff about what his thoughts were. And is it Yakuya? I'm going to say it wrong.
Yaku.
Cosmopolitan? Cosmopolitan. There you go. Thank you, Flax.
Sure.
The rhetoric right now has been this around everything that's happened. One, everybody is kind of taking this as a shock to the system for the Japanese team to be out this early in the tournament, and it has really started to have people ask questions about how Japanese baseball is played and what's been happening. There's been a huge debate, as you mentioned, about the fact that the traditional style of Japanese baseball, which is fundamentals over everything else, kind of has started to go out the window, and the influence of American baseball is maybe too heavy right now on what's going on the Japanese side. Additionally, too, with the loss, there's a lot of talk, as we mentioned, about how we're picking the guy who will lead the national team for Samurai Japan in the future. Additionally, too, I think one of the big things that we saw is an overall change in direction of player development within Japanese baseball. I don't think Japan has ever, and we've seen this already, lost so many players prior to the NPB draft in any era of their sport than now. Guys are choosing to forego the NPB draft to come to America and play collegiate baseball, to come to America and start their professional careers, right? We saw that with Shotaro Mori, right? We saw that with Rintaro Sasaki, right? These guys are making the decision to come here and play their professional career here up front rather than sticking to the traditional NPB route.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. It's the exposure of multiple directions that they could be going. But I also think it's the allure of, getting to Major League Baseball faster and the development structure that exists within the collegiate ranks, within the minor league ranks, to get to Major League Baseball with the style of baseball that they come from at the high school level there, right? The excitement that American teams have to take on these guys that have really good work ethics, culturally are built on that model, have incredible fundamentals because they're taught it from a very young age. Whereas in the US, the structure of teaching from a young age, the model is generally go have fun with your friends. And that's not a bad thing. And that's how I tend to believe that baseball should be taught, because the realities are, how far are most of these kids going to go? That's not how it's taught there, and that's okay. But I think it also excites a lot of U.S. teams to say, well, we'll happily take these kids because there's a whole lot shorter of a learning and development curve that we feel like we need to have here. And if the U.S. system can get them at a younger age and breed them into kind of a best of both worlds, we find a lot more success potentially. That's what we're trying to see, if that will happen with a guy like Rintaro Sasaki, who coming out of high school was heralded as a very similar hitter to Shohei Ohtani. And we haven't necessarily seen it fully at Stanford, but the last 10 games or so at Stanford, he's been hitting the cover off the ball. So he might just be a streaky hitter, or he might just be a guy that takes a little bit of time to adjust. And once he figures it out and adjusts, he's pretty hard to beat. That's the interesting factor that maybe we don't necessarily see the Japanese game take on to begin with. I think the excitement for change is probably something that more hinders than helps the way that the current style of NPB is happening, behaving, however you want to refer to it. But more than anything, it is leading to definitely a fracture in the current existence. It's probably the way I would phrase it.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think it's requiring new thought and new thought process. I think this is a really beneficial thing to be happening now, though. I think you always need a catalyst for change. And if this is that catalyst for change, I think it can only be positive at the end of the day, as long as effort is put in for baseball being played in Japan. I think when I look at this holistically and I think through everything going on, one of the things that we've seen is the NPB is not a league that is here to conform. And I completely understand not wanting to conform to what is considered an American style of baseball. Like, I really don't have a problem with that. I think sports are played differently all across the world. I think it gives them their own flavor, and it gives you your own reason to love the game that you have. But at the end of the day, this has put Samurai Japan's international teams on the back foot at the end of the day. It's very well documented that the baseball used in Japan in the NPB is a little bit smaller. It's a little bit easier to grip. It's a little bit easier to spin, right? When you come in and you have to use a Major League Baseball in international play, again, automatically on the back foot. When you're not in your league utilizing a pitch clock, right? When these aren't your rule sets, but they're general rule sets for others, the KBO has done a really good job of not fully conforming, but adopting enough of these rule changes that their team might not necessarily be as far on the back foot. They don't have as many years of a professional league as the major leagues or the NPB. But at the end of the day, I think those types of things are going to help them develop at a higher and quicker level. One of the things that I wanted to bring up that got said by Yakia is the fact that the Japanese market, the NPB, has not been able to create or produce outside of Ohtani these true speed, power, five-tool type players in the same way where we do see guys coming over from the KBO who are fitting that mold a little bit better and getting that much more of an opportunity from a bat perspective, right? Jung-Hoo Lee, Hassan Kim, right? There's another gentleman came over this year, and I'm going to say his name wrong, so I will double check that before I say it. Signed with the Padres to be a utility man and play left field. So point being is that there's also this notion and understanding that Japan can develop pitching with the best of them, even being on the back foot with a different baseball. But the big point that was brought up, Flax, was the fact that the Japanese dead ball era in the NPB is potentially really harming the talent that comes over. Imai said it really well when he came over. He made the point that it's easier to pitch in Japan because, frankly, he wasn't worried about people taking him out of the yard. Every batter he will face in international play, especially in a tournament like this, though he did not play this time around, or in the MLB as he starts his career with the Astros, is liable to jump the yard on a mistake pitch. It's something that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, and I think, I remember when I was growing up and starting to recognize, like, wow, all 9 hitters in the lineup can hit a home run. And that's, imagine you come from a league that is a professional league and you are a pitcher, right? I'm a kid at 9, 10 years old starting to take on that recognition. Imagine knowing that and knowingly stepping into that and saying, I have to figure out how to do something different with what I already do and do well. That's a hurdle for guys to step over. And we talk about it all the time when pitchers come over from the NPB of, expect X amount of inches of IVB on his fastball to be lost. Expect X amount of miles per hour on his velocity of his fastball to be lost. Expect X amount of inches of break on his off speeds to be lost. Because the ball is different. We saw it very early on with Tomoyuki Sugano with the Orioles. His hand was cramping early on in the season in games, still getting used to a larger baseball. And it's not that much, but our bodies get so used to the thing that we're trying to utilize. We're talking about, a half a centimeter, maybe. But our bodies get so used to doing certain things and trying to do certain things and then overusing other parts of our body to try and overcompensate for those. It's why we see hitters potentially have more success if they can stay within themselves and do what it is that they're brought over to do, which is where we see non-power hitters come over and tend to have a little bit more success because the expectation is that they're not going to turn out more power than they had in the NPB because this is a power-heavy league. The expectation is that they're going to be the guy that comes in and table sets. When they get to stick to that plan, they're successful. When they have to deviate from that plan to try and be something else, similar to the pitchers, they find a whole lot less success. I think the guy you were talking about was Sung Moon Song.
It is Sun Moon Song. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'll leave it on this because I think a lot of people probably don't know that the MPB uses a very different baseball. It's not just down to the size of the baseball. The leather on their baseball is a little bit softer. It has more pores, which make it feel like it has a little bit more grip or a tacky feel to the baseball from an overall perspective. The seams are a little bit smaller and a little bit more raised, which allows you to have a better grip on the baseball. And as all of you can imagine when we start talking about seams and composition of baseball, it also means when guys come over, the shape of their pitches does change from time to time. Not everybody comes over and still has the exact same curveball or the exact same slider. Outside of just IVB or IHB being less, it also can just simply change from an overall perspective some of the directions that you see in the actual pitch shape. Very interesting from an overall perspective. My opinion at the end of the day, Flax, as we get to the end of this topic, is that whether anybody likes it or not, you and I have had this discussion a million times. The Major League Baseball's goal should simply be to be the Premier League for baseball across the world. The ability to potentially, in a scenario like this, see Japan and Japanese baseball conform a little bit more towards what is happening in international play, which makes baseball a little bit more similar to what we're playing at the MLB level, it's only going to help there be more transferable talent. It's going to be a little bit easier on scouting departments. It's going to help some of these players potentially shine within the MLB structure. The end of the day, though, is that good for Japan is the question.
And that's what I was going to say, right? We do need to be clear here, is that we are fans of Major League Baseball. We are also fans of NPB baseball. NPB, by the way, being the Nippon Professional Baseball League, as it's called. Do we want to make things easier on the U.S. to take players from Japan?
Of course.
Maybe the NPB doesn't want that. Maybe it is actually purposeful that they don't want to be as well known. Maybe it's purposeful that they're not trying to conform because they're not in it to give their players the best opportunity to get to the MLB. They're in it to have the most competitive league that they can for their local fans, like the MLB is trying to create their most competitive league for their local fans. And that's also what we have to recognize here, is that not everything has to be international. Do they want to compete on the international stage and do well in the Olympics and do well in the World Baseball Classic? Absolutely. In the World Juniors? Absolutely. But are they also perfectly happy having the most competitive version of their league for their Japanese fans? Absolutely. And we should, as American fans, recognize that what we say doesn't just go, and that they may not look at the way that we play baseball as being the best version of baseball. We talk about all the time how hard it is to watch this version of baseball sometimes. It drives me nuts how many infield pop-ups drop in our version of the highest level of baseball. That stuff doesn't happen there. I enjoy watching cleanly played defense, pitching, baseball. They use pitch mixes more. They throw way more off speed. They don't just try and jam fastballs down your throat. It's a fun version of baseball to watch. And I think that we also need to be cognizant of that when we talk about this, to not just say, how can the NPB better suit the MLB? Because the reality is, I don't think that they care. I don't think that they have interest in better suiting the MLB. I don't think that they have more of an interest in better suiting a posting system. I think the only differentiation that is hurting them right now when it comes to that stuff is that the dollar values they are receiving, and it was very clear this year with guys like Munetaka Murakami, is that the numbers are getting way, way smaller because the entire MLB has decided nobody needs to give a hitter a long-term deal. We just don't have to. We really don't even have to give pitchers a long-term deal. Everybody in this league, through the posting system, has determined we could just give guys 2-3 year deals, let them prove themselves. If they don't, great. If they do, then they'll get their deal. If that happens, through the posting system, that previously owned team isn't getting anything out of it. And nobody on this side really cares. So if the NPB wants to maybe make a little bit more money off of this process that isn't going anywhere, if they want to hold on to a little bit more of their talent and create a pipeline that suits the levels and needs of the development, absolutely start to conform. But if you're happy to create what you believe is the best possible product for your local fans, do you. And I have no issue with that.
I completely agree. I think I look at everything as how do we build the game, and the game for me revolves around the MLB. So my level of bias will always
be a very American attitude of you, Ryan.
Well, welcome to capitalism, I guess. I really don't know what to say at that point. But I would leave it on this. I think one of the biggest things that Samurai Japan is going to have a really difficult decision on is, are the changes worth it to keep your national teams from being on the back foot when they compete, right? I think we're really going to find out where the priorities lie when it comes to international play at this level. I think it's really important to the players. I think it's really important to how Japan is seen in the world. I think it's important to them that people know how good of a league that they possess and the quality of player that they churn out, whether they stay in Japan or they go anywhere else. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of this over the next few months. Flax, let's move on to topic number 2. I don't know if you knew this, but Bobby Witt Jr. is kind of good.
What do they say? 2/3 of the earth is covered by water. The other third is covered by Bobby Witt Jr.
I've heard that of recent. Yeah. And I'm glad you're here to confirm that that's the case.
Pretty sure it's true.
We've been watching Bobby Witt throughout this World Baseball Classic make some unbelievable plays. He is not the only guy for the Kansas City Royals who has been playing very well here in the World Baseball Classic. Vinny Pasquantino, the Pasquatch himself, helping lead that Italian team to a semifinal game. In tow, Jack Caglione, kicking butt and taking names himself. And of course, Maikel Garcia has been hitting, I believe, number 2 for the Venezuelan team.
Yeah, number 2.
And been playing very well. This brings me back to it, Flex. The Kansas City Royals, we talked about them. We've stated in the past that we're really excited for the future of this team. Today felt like the perfect time for us to talk a little bit more about the Royals, our expectations of them in 2026, and the moves that they've made leading up to this MLB season.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year was about as disappointing of a season as it could have been, coming off a year in which they reached the ALDS, put together a good roster, and then coming into this year, right, you have Noah Cameron and Chris Bubic as young guys in 2025 expecting to be the thing kind of leading you. Bubic goes down late with a shoulder issue. Reagans is a guy who you want to be leading you. He gets hurt. Noah Cameron's still a bright spot, but the reliancy ends up being on Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo, and the realities of the situation is they should be anywhere between your 3 and 5, nowhere near your top 2. And if you're relying on them to be one of your top 2, then you're probably not going to win your division. And I don't say that as shade to either of those guys. That's just not where they're at in their career anymore. They, at one point in time, threw that way and played a really important role in being more of a leadership on the field type of player. It's just not where they're at. And then on the offensive side, right, we could talk about it anyway till Sunday. Because of the level of expectation that a guy like Bobby Witt has created, last year was a down year. Still one of the best players in baseball, but it wasn't the MVP caliber season that they need him to have. But Maikel Garcia stepped up, had a phenomenal year. Vinny Pasquantino, another full healthy year, finally. Hits the ball like nobody's business, pull side only. I love it. And then, again, another bright spot. Carter Jensen coming up and being way better than anybody expected in his first go-round. Still has some work to do on the defensive end, but the guy takes really good at-bats, has one of the best left-handed swings you could ever watch. There's so much to like about this team. I will say this. There were some moves they made this offseason that I questioned, right? Trading for Isaac Collins, giving up a left-handed arm like Angel Zerpa. We just saw him in the WBC as well. He looks phenomenal pitching for Venezuela. There's so many pieces up in the air, but the collection of what they have built, I think, is going to compete really well in the Central.
Once you look at the roster that they've put together on paper, I think you pause for a moment, right? Knowing who these guys are at this point in their career, recognizing that there's still upside and ceiling to be given with some of these guys. Now, with upside and ceiling also brings floor, and nobody wants to talk about a floor. But at the end of the day, look, Kansas City Royals last year, 82 and 80 Flax. They did not, as we know, hit nearly as well as they wanted to, ranking 26th in home runs, 26th in runs scored, 22nd in on-base percentage, 18th in slugging, 15th in average. I think they came into the offseason recognizing that there was a need on the offensive side, but I think one of the things that they did a really good job of here was not overreaching when you're in a space where you've got guys who you expect to play a much bigger role in your lineup who are internal to your team in 2026. Fun note that I want to bring up because now feels like the right time. The expected 13 hitters that will be either in the lineup or on the bench for the Kansas City Royals, 9 of those players that we expect to be on this roster are homegrown. Give Kansas City credit where their credit is due. They really showed us in their offseason moves that they're pretty ready to stick heavy on the guys that they know. They're ready to stick on what they know and who they've developed. Offseason acquisitions that they've made on the offensive side, brought in Lane Thomas, who was hurt most of last year. Lane Thomas, outfielder, played for the Nationals and the Guardians. This guy is very simply an elite left-handed specialist at the dish. He's a guy who they'll use as a weak side platoon from time to time, hitting .302 with 145 WRC plus against lefties in 2024. They also brought in, from a signing perspective, Starling Marte, Nice veteran bat to add. We understand that Marte's at the tail end of his career, but he's a guy who, once again, is going to give you consistent professional at-bats every single time he steps up to the dish. The last big offensive ad that they had, you've already mentioned, they got in a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers, was Isaac Collins. You and I really love this ad as a absolute utility guy so far in his career. Platoon neutral switch hitter. Last year, ranked, I believe, in the top 5 in the Rookie of the Year votings, hit 263, 9 home runs, 122 WRC plus, and a 779 OPS. What a great option to have, whether he's in your lineup or coming off of your bench. I think this supplements the rest of the lineup pretty well, Flax. And as you and I have looked at this, if you gave me the keys to drive here with this lineup, the lineup for me would read Maikel Garcia playing third. This is an order of how I would hit them. Maikel Garcia playing third, hitting first. Bobby Witt hitting second, playing short. Caglione hitting third, playing right field. I think that surprises a lot of people, but my expectation of Caglione is he's going to be that guy who scores you a lot of runs when there's nobody on base, right? That's where you want the guy who might drive the ball into the ground to be hitting on a regular basis. Vinny Pasquantino hitting fourth, playing first base with an expectation that he continues to be healthy and steps up his game. Salvador Perez splitting the catching duties and DHing in the 5 spot. Jonathan India playing second base in the 6 spot. Carter Jensen splitting the duties at catcher and DHing in the 7 spot. Isaac Collins, more than likely, I think probably starts in left field for them. That platoon neutral piece really, really assists him in winning that job, playing left field. And then finally, probably a split in center field of Kyle Isbell, Starling Marte, and Lane Thomas in the 9-hole. I love that lineup on paper. I think it's one that can do a lot of damage. And when you look at the 1 through 7, especially because we both know, in our opinion, what Carter Jensen's probably about to be, you're looking at a group of guys who can really do it. And my final note before I pass this over to you to get your thoughts.
Sure.
We also just talked about an entire lineup of guys who in that top 6 core have more than 2+ years worth of MLB service time. They are playing with guys who they feel like from an analytical perspective, they can at least count on doing X because we have enough data to say they should.
The only other thing I would add there is the potential of a Michael Massey, Jonathan India platoon at second base would not shock me. Just given the rising age and versatility of Jonathan India, a younger Michael Massey with maybe trying to fit more of his at-bats into the game right on left. But the other big thing that I think offensively for this team that we haven't talked about yet, the Royals moved the fences in. And the Royals are helping themselves by doing this. We saw the Orioles do this. In 2022, they pushed the wall all the way out. They did the opposite. They expected to lose somewhere between 50 and 60 home runs that year. They lost 50. Over the next 3 years, while it was still out there before they recently moved it back in 2025, they lost an average of 46 home runs per season, and that's a combined 46 that they hit and the other team would hit. They expected that by bringing the wall back in, they'd get about 30 back, and last year, total got about 30 back. The expectation for Kansas City is that in total, since 2021, they have potentially lost, both given up and earned, 231 home runs. And based on the balls that were hit and put in play, that would be 124 for the Royals and 107 against the Royals. We saw it last year with Jack Caglione hit a ball that would have been out in 25 of 30 parks. Unfortunately, he was in the wrong ballpark, and he flew out nice and easily to the right fielder. I think that will be by far and away the biggest impact to this team. I think you take a guy like Vinny Pasquantino, who pulled the ball and hit 32 home runs last year and gave us a full season, and I do not think it is crazy to say that he could hit 40 home runs next year. If he continues to hit the ball as well as he is hitting the ball. People were joking about it in Houston the other night because he had 3 home runs that were hit under 350 feet in Houston in the same game, which in StatCast era has never happened. all 3 of those home runs would have gone out at Kauffman. Last year, none of those home runs would have gone out at Kauffman. So I think that is maybe the biggest impact to a team that, again, offensively, 26th in home runs, 26th in runs, 22nd in on-base percentage, 18th in slug, and 15th in average. Realistically, there is only one direction for the majority of those things to go, especially when you're bringing your fences in a ballpark that it's already way easier than most to just make contact because of how big their batter's eye is. So,
completely agree. And I'm really excited to see what happens. I think it's a great call out. I think it's going to help them offensively. You know what? Here's the thing. And this transitions really well into this rotation and what they've added this offseason before we get into our seasonal expectations of this group, which is the fact that they had some offseason acquisitions that were really there to help the bullpen. We both know it. Matt Strum, Alex Lange, Nick Mears coming over in that trade with Milwaukee as well, Mitch Spence. The expectation is for most of these moves that they made to affect the bullpen. However, we're talking about a starting rotation of Cole Reagans, Michael Wacha, Chris Bubik, Seth Lugo, and Noah Cameron. Oh, by the way, that goes left, right, left, right, left. Okay? Let's like add this in here, right? They also are going to force you to see something different every single night. You're not going to be able to see, back-to-back righties who have similar stuff, back-to-back lefties who have similar stuff. This team is built to keep the ball in the yard and be successful even in the new dimensions of Kauffman.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the same conversation that we had when the Orioles moved it out is, how will this impact their ability to continue to develop pitchers? How will this impact their ability to go get pitchers? But like I said the other night, you put a guy like Bobby Witt Jr. behind him, I think they stop thinking about what happens beyond the dirt. I think you have other things that can draw free agents in, that this is not going to be as big of a detractor as you could potentially see it be. By the way, it is Alex Lang.
Lang? My bad. Thank you.
No, listen. It's a running theme on this show, and I will never, at this point, for our listeners' sake, ever let you get away with it.
That's fine. You should.
My hope is that you hear me slip up at some point and call me out. But I just don't think your brain is ever thinking about it.
No, I'm too busy trying to make sure we're on time. It never happens. Flex, expectations of this team, and I'll run through them because I think we're both on the same page. This team absolutely has the ability to win 90-plus games in 2026. They should, no question at all, be fighting for an AL Central title. I think the division right now is pretty top-heavy with the White Sox still coming along. I don't think they're quite there yet. Minnesota, unfortunately, going the opposite way. 3-horse race here, Guardians, Tigers, Royals. I think the Royals have as good of a chance as any of the other 2 teams that were just mentioned. Bobby Witt, MVP season loading. Listen, the way he looks in the WBC right now, the plays that he's making, the confidence he is playing baseball with, would not be shocked if we see Bobby Witt MVP #1. And finally, you nailed it. You hit on it. I threw it on the paper. I would be almost surprised if the Pasquatch does not break 40 home runs, if healthy, for the first time in his career.
I'm with you. Not much for me to add there.
Love it. Well, look, if I haven't taught you anything, and I certainly haven't taught you how to say anybody's name, Jackson will absolutely teach you and us something in this week's Jackson's Bullpen. Jackson, tell us something new.
All right, boys, welcome back to Jackson's Bullpen this week. We have a fun topic, but as most of y'all know, mainly I'm a pitching guy, pitching metrics, pitching data. But one thing about me that I find I don't get to talk about a whole lot on here is baseball history. I did a Dave Stieb topic once where I talked about Dave Stieb. I wanted to bring another underrated pitcher into the fold and talk about him a little bit today. And this is a guy, one of the only 4 players who has 4 more Cy Young awards, and that is Steve Carlton. He is not a name that you hear that often when you talk about the greatest pitchers of all time, in my opinion. In the circles and the stuff I've seen, you don't hear his name talked about as much. Steve Carlton, 4-time Cy Young Award winner, Triple Crown winner, 10-time All-Star. He had a stretch from like basically the entire 70s, where he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. Had multiple seasons with 10+ WAR. I mean, this is a guy. 1972, 1.97 ERA. Started 41 games and completed 30 of them. Phillies in 1980. This was 8 years later, at the age of 35, started 38 games. This was a guy who pitched until he was in his 40s. Hurts for me a little bit as he was traded from the Cardinals early in his career. Could have been a long-time Cardinal. But Steve Carlton, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated pitchers in the history of baseball. And I think is easily a top 3 left-handed starting pitcher we've ever seen. I just wanted to get on and talk a little baseball history. Steve Carlton, one of the better left-handed arms we've ever seen.
24 years at the big league level. That in its own right is a win. There is a ridiculous amount of black ink, as we like to say, on his baseball reference page. For those of you who aren't familiar what that means, it means you led the league in that category or statistic. And we talk a lot about quote-unquote black ink when you're going into the Hall of Fame. The biggest thing that I would bring up is we just talked about how outstanding Clayton Kershaw's 2014 was, where he had a 10.8 WAR, had a 1.77 ERA. Carlton's 1972, he had a 12.1 WAR, 27 wins. I know, I get it, we don't care about win numbers, but when it's 27, I do. It's enough for me to say, wow, that was kind of crazy. 1.97 ERA, leading the league. Again, like Jackson already said, 41 starts and 30 complete games. My arm would have fallen off.
And just looking back at the NL MVP voting from that year, I think he got kind of shafted, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think if it were today's metrics, I think he wins without a doubt. I mean, we're talking about...
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about Johnny Bench won it. 8.6 B-WAR, had 40 home runs, 125 RBIs, had a 920 OPS. Billy Williams probably finishes even higher than potentially Johnny Bench did because of an over 1,000 OPS, 37 home runs, put together a really good season there. But what Steve Carlton did in that season should have been top 3 at least in MVP voting.
Would you like to hear the craziest part?
Please.
Ryan, you said he had 27 wins, correct?
Yes.
The Phillies went 59-97 that year.
Oh my God.
It's that year?
He picked up 27 wins for
Holy
a team that was
smokes.
by far the worst in baseball. 59-97 that year for the Phillies. They did not have one offensive player finish with over 2 wins above replacement. He was their only player who finished with over 2 wins above replacement, and he had 12.1.
That's nuts.
Steve Carlton was the 1972 Philadelphia Phillies.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, he was doing good for a long time on a Phillies team that was bad. I think he ended up winning a World Series with them in the early 80s, I believe. But, I mean, this was a guy who's going in and day out. And, like, as a guy who played for a very bad high school baseball team, it's tough to win. It's tough to get going a little bit when you know your team sucks. Steve Carlton was going right there in probably the middle of September on a 50-win Phillies team, throwing complete game shutouts and just carving.
That was also the last year that they used a very interesting logo. They only used that logo from 1970 to 1972. It was the one where it said Phillies with like a child, a male child and a female child, sitting there ready to play baseball, I guess, wearing British outfits. Not a good logo.
Not a good logo.
At all.
Much cooler logo
at
right
all.
here on your screen right now, for those of you who are watching on YouTube.
But I will say they turned a leaf into an elite logo in 1973. And started to get better, started to play better baseball.
Listen, first off, 346.1 innings pitched. He had a 182 ERA plus.
Struck out 310
Disgusting.
guys.
201 fit. He got a little lucky.
Got a little bit lucky. Little bit lucky, Steve Carlton, that year. Flax, what a great call out, Flax. I'm so glad you said that. All those Steve Carlton haters out there, they are validated.
You know, that was the only year that Steve Carlton had a sub-1 whip.
Interesting.
I think Steve Carlton was just I think amongst his walk to strikeout ratio, Steve Carlton was probably a guy that got away with maybe putting more guys on base. 2 years later, he led the league in walks for a pitcher. But
probably like a little Blake Snell of his time-ish, not as extreme.
With more of a rubber arm.
Yeah, his stuff was also probably so good that it's like, if I walk this guy, it's not a big issue. He's not scoring. This guy's getting struck out. Even if I walk him, I'll strike out the next guy.
That's a heck of a comp.
What?
I love that.
What a group of pitchers in 1972. Gaylord, Perry, Catfish Hunter, Jim Palmer, Luis Tant, Steve Carlton, Fergie Jenkins, Tom Seaver, Don Sutton,
names.
Bob Gibson. I mean, this, you know what?
You're talking about a
36. Awesome.
You're talking about a 36-year-old Bob Gibson who threw 278 innings, posted a 7.1 BWAR. I mean, he won a Gold Glove that year. It was an All-Star. 36 years old, Bob Gibson pitched to a 2.46 ERA in 34 starts.
Wow! Shout out to Mike Marshall, a 1.78 ERA that year. Dog.
Golly. For
the Montreal Expos.
Man, this guy was ahead of his time jumping from team to team. My Lord. Mike Marshall did win a Cy Young, by the way. 2 years later.
Bullpen Cy Young, yeah?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. As a closer. Led the league with 21 saves that year. 208 innings out of the bullpen.
As Dennis Eckersley and many of the guys who we would consider high leverage closers, they had more of our situation right now with you face the best guys in the biggest spot. Yeah. That's when you come in as a reliever. It has nothing to do with who finishes the game. It has everything to do with where people are coming in the lineup. So what makes something like this so fun as we continue this conversation that Steve Carlton has started is a guy like Mike Marshall was coming in and simply facing the best 3 to 5 hitters that the other team could give him. And he was able to put up, with his Cy Young year, a 2.42 over 106 games pitched. That's ridiculous.
106 games pitched.
Out of the pen was ridiculous.
Out of the pen.
That's dumb. 208 innings out of the pen. Get out of here with that.
Yeah.
Starters almost to go 200 innings in 2026.
Almost averaged 2 innings per outing as a bullpen arm. Unbelievable. Only 143 strikeouts, by the way. I would love to know pitches per at bat. Pitches per at bat had to be like 2.5.
This is classic Jackson's bullpen. Just sending us down the tangent that Flax has wanted to go down all day long. All day long. He's been sitting there in his work chair waiting for this one. I love it, Jackson. Wow.
Thank you, Jackson.
Great job. As always.
Boys, thanks for having me on today. This was so much fun. I just love talking about 1970s baseball. My dad would be so proud of me right now. That's all I'm going to say. This was the baseball he grew up watching. But like I said, I appreciate you all having me on. Let's have a good rest of the episode.
All right, that was Jackson's bullpen. Jackson, thank you as always. We hope you learned something new because we know we learned something new. Flax, I have a lot on the paper for our final topic here. Honestly, I think the way I want to go about this is a little bit different than what I have on the paper here, which is Clayton Kershaw has probably donned a professional baseball jersey as a player for the last time. Just recently pulled off the American roster for the United States team in the WBC. We know he has retired from Major League Baseball. Clayton Kershaw might be, and at least through our childhood of the full careers you and I got to see, the most dominating pitcher across the board. I don't know that how else do you put that? I think that we got to see in our lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was the pinnacle. He was the guy every single outing that you didn't question what you were going to get. You knew what you were going to get. And he is, in this moment, what people see when a Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens step up on the mound every 5 days. if baseball Twitter was as big then as it is now, it would be Happy Kershaw Day every 5 days to all who celebrate.
And biggest difference, which I love that you bring up, Scooble and Skeens, is we watched him do it at that level of dominance for about 15 years. Yeah. Let's stop for people and to take that in consideration. You're talking about the guy as a starter who has the best ERA in live ball baseball since 1920 when the live ball era started. 3 Cy Youngs, an MVP award in 2014, 7 consecutive All-Star selections. Between the curveball and the ghost slider that seemed to make every hitter look, as if they didn't know you were throwing a baseball and they were swinging at thin air. It was just really impressive to watch. And I think one of the things that resonates the most is kind of how you put it with Skeens and Scooball. I remember being a, 15-year-old kid watching Major League Baseball and thinking to myself every single time the Nationals had to face Clayton Kershaw, and these are pretty good Nationals teams between 2010 and, 2019. The only thing that went through my brain was, should I turn this on and do I want to? Not because I didn't want to watch baseball or greatness. I kind of knew what the outcome was probably going to be before I turned the game on because Kershaw was simply that dominant through that stretch of time. In his 2014 MVP Cy Young Award season, Flax, he pitched to a 1.77 ERA and had over 10 WAR. What are we talking about?
What's even crazier is he was borderline better in 2013.
Which is ridiculous.
But to be fair, the guys that he lost to in that MVP race, he was never gonna outpace the years that McCutchen and Goldschmidt had. But what Kershaw was able to do in that MVP season and winning the MVP and the Cy Young in the same season, first of all, is just absolutely insane. But we're talking about a 1.77 ERA, a 1.81 FIP, a .86 WHIP. Virtually not giving up base runners. The amount of innings that he pitched with no base runners versus the innings that he pitched with a guy on base outweighed one another, and that doesn't happen. It does not happen that you throw more innings with nobody on base than you throw innings with someone on base. And he did that for an entire season in which he threw almost 200 innings. That's absurd. And I don't know that there's another way to say it other than to just tell you, you need to go look up his stats if you haven't in a while, because it is worth
just watch any start from these years that we're talking about. You could watch any start from 2011 to 2017. I think that's his 7-year peak range, if I remember correctly. You could do that, and it truly doesn't matter what start you turn on. The likelihood is you're going to pick a start, and he dominated for 7 innings. Plain and simple. I mean, it was something else. Flax, one of his greatest moments, and we know this well, was in that 2014 season. He throws a no-hitter against the Colorado Rockies. The only base runner reached on an error, and Kershaw struck out 15 hitters.
It was the epitome of how great the season was as a whole. It was a microcosm of how great the season was as a whole, that he just basically said in that year, I am going to be the best pitcher in the game. And on this date, I am going to be the best pitcher that you've ever seen. And just for people's understanding, that Colorado Rockies team, not phenomenal, but you're still talking about in a lineup with Nolan Arenado, Troy Tulowitzki, DJ LeMahieu, Justin Morneau. I mean, these are guys, Charlie Blackmon, these are guys that on any given night, their ability to just put bat to ball and find the outfield grass seemed as an expectation, just as it was that Kershaw was going to dominate. Everyone listening to this will be like, wow, those guys were in the same lineup together and they won 63 games, 66 games. Yeah, again, same thing as always. They didn't have any pitching. 23-year-old Jordan Lyles was making 22 starts for that team.
Yeah, he was a top prospect back then too. Big time.
Yeah.
Listen, Jordan Lyles, I'm not here to talk any shade. That man carved out a career. Jordan Lyles
Innings eater,
discussion,
man.
we'll deep dive on that man
Innings
one
eater.
day. That is a fun topic for us to do.
Jorge De La Rosa threw 184 innings for that Rockies team that year.
Nice.
Do you know who Kershaw went against in that game against Colorado? Actually, you know what? Here's an even crazier stat. 10 days earlier, he started against Colorado and won. And then went and faced that lineup again 10 days later and threw a no-hitter.
There's nothing harder in baseball for anybody who has not got to have this feeling than having to face the exact same lineup in what I would consider quick succession with 10, which by the way, 10 days counts, and it just didn't matter. That's absurd.
He then 2 weeks later pitched against them again at Colorado, 8 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 8 Ks.
How many hits did he give up between those 3 games?
5. 5 hits in 22 innings. 3-0.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2014 Clayton Kershaw.
2 of which were in Colorado at altitude.
Do you think D. Podesta needs to call him and ask him to do some things with his curveball and his slider and altitude to see how that works?
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that we pulled this together.
So, at the end of the day, I think what was really important to Flax and I is that Clayton Kershaw truly is one of, if not the best pitcher of the generation we got to grow up watching from a baseball perspective. I recognize that the whole detractor on him is, yeah, he didn't do it in the playoffs as well. I'm a big fan of saying yada, yada, yada to that. The guy is a 3-time World Series champion at the end of the day. He did end up finding a way to get over the hill. And when you put his body of work together, 3,000 plus strikeouts, 5 ERA titles, 10 All-Star selections, again, a 2.43 career ERA, which is the lowest in live ball era. We're talking about one of the most remarkable left-handed pitchers and pitchers in baseball history, and the guy deserves his own segment on Baseball Unstaged.
And just for the sake of comparison, because it is easier for people to understand when you look at other long-standing careers, Justin Verlander, great example of a guy who, in his time, has been extremely good.
MVP award winner himself.
Exactly, 3-time Cy Young Award winner. Again, these guys are all future Hall of Famers. You know, putting together in his career an ERA that was a full run higher, a whip that was a full, .13 higher. Like, all of these numbers for Kershaw in his prime and a guy like Verlander in his prime are like still almost incomparable. And I think that's the craziest part about it. Verlander's just been doing it for 20 years. And Kershaw, for as long as he did pitch, definitely was not extending out at the same level of leverage as a guy like Verlander. But yeah, Clayton Kershaw, man, it's so fun to go back and look at what he did and then go back and watch. And I mean, they did a whole YouTube video on his slider.
As they should have. The ghost
Crazy.
slider. Now we have the ghost fork.
Sick.
Either way, Clayton, thank you for everything you've done for the game of baseball. It's been a joy and a pleasure to watch. It's going to be sad to not see you on the hill, but let me tell you what, you deserve the rest and the time with your family. You've given a lot to the game, and we do highly appreciate that. Flax, final thoughts on this Tuesday for our listeners.
The Denison Big Red had another really strong weekend, beat number 17 Adrian 15-5, and then blew away 2 other opponents. They are headed to the great state of Oregon to go play 5 games against some new opponents, test their pitching depth, playing 5 games in 5 days, and then make their way back to Ohio. But they are currently the number 1 team in the country.
Let's go Big Red, baby. Come on with it.
Yeah, playing good baseball right now.
All right, so for anybody who doesn't recognize this too, Flax has every game somewhere on his phone, and I went over before this PWHL game, and his phone's just sitting there with the score of the game on, and all I do is look down and see 13-0 Denison and think to myself, that seems pretty status quo of late for the Big Reds, so no surprise to hear the update from you is as good as I thought. Flax, my final thoughts? The Roman Empire has officially come to take over Major League Baseball. And with that being said, if Roman Anthony is a strong side platoon this year, I'm going to throw my headset. That's all. That's it. Just like that.
There's a reason Rob Refsnyder was not re-signed.
Hey, man, they could have used a weak side for Willier, and I mean that just nicely. Come on, man. It didn't have to be Roman's weak side.
We'll see.
Left on left against a premier arm, as you tweeted. That's right. Left on left against a premier arm in the World Baseball Classic. As always, thank you so much for listening, guys. Share the podcast, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you are when it comes to listening to podcasts. Share it with your friends. Share it with your parents. Share it with your cousins. I don't really care. We just would love you guys to share the podcast. Also, follow us on socials. Come interact with us. X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. Really, again, wherever you are, we are. Pat Flax on the back because I should say he's there over me. But at the end of the day, we appreciate you guys. As always, have a great week.